This Pitch Breakfast video is brought to you by Spangler & Agins, attorneys for Charlotte's startup community.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is James Knowles, and I am the CEO of Speakalytics. Speakalytics is the artificial intelligence sales coach for enterprise conversations. We drive customer acquisition and customer engagement by analyzing sales calls. We exist because 92% of all customer interactions occur over the phone. Between my team and I, we've had the opportunity to speak with hundreds of sales leaders, and we learned that they all share one common goal, and that's being able to generate predictable and scalable revenue. But the challenge in doing so is time, having enough time to actually listen to every sales call and figure out how you can actually improve your sales force. And the result today is only 13% of buyers actually believe salespeople understand their needs. That's why Speakalytics uses voice analytics to analyze sales calls and to cultivate what we consider to be the ABCs of sales intelligence, enabling sales leaders with A, the ability to train at scale, B, business intelligence, and C, insight into the customer's journey. With our market, the market is there's 2.2 billion being spent annually in sales training every year. And with our price per seat model, we expect to be able to capitalize on that market. Our marketing strategy is developing 3 case studies around 3 Fortune 500 companies, in which we expect to leverage those case studies to actually be able to establish partnerships with voice over IP providers. Subsequently, we expect to work with banks in providing a real-time solution that they've shown interest for, and that's why we are actually in the process of raising a $650,000 round to ensure that we can create a real-time solution that's ready for financial institutions.
Thanks, James. I think you did a pretty good job.
Thanks.
Is this a SaaS software? So you use the word AI. The other part of it is you're selling software. I didn't hear SaaS model, something I would make sure I'd include.
Okay.
How that business model is going to be laid out. And I assume also you're going toward larger enterprise?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I guess I'd say you create enough interest. Sales enablement software, probably these guys could talk to it a little bit better, but is a huge business, $2 billion as you mentioned plus. When you throw a huge market size out there, that's not your addressable market, particularly in the near term. I would, again, to show recognition that you understand the market, you might put forth what you're going at and what sliver of that sales enablement market you're going at. Okay. That's all I had. I'll look at you guys.
So I like to focus on the structure, because when you have something like 2 minutes to give a pitch, an elevator pitch, you really have to get that right, I think. And if you think about the sections of what you're going to try to cover in a 2-minute pitch, right? You're meeting somebody in an elevator. You just got to think about the 3 things you want people to get across, or what you want to get across. And that will help you if you sort of stumble or you forget something. You don't have to memorize this, but if you do remember one thing is the 3 things you want to get across, and then the rest, well, you make it up. So I think that's where you struggle when you started to think, oh, what am I going to say next? Because you're doing great at the beginning when you're talking about the problem. And if you had probably just remembered the next thing, which is maybe the solution, like I didn't hear anything about your solution, then you could have I'm sure you remember your solution. And then you said, okay, I'm going to talk about the market. And you mentioned a few things about the market, but by then you were already kind of struggling a little bit. So if you just remember the 3 or 4 things you want to come across, you can always go back to that section. 2 minutes is no time, right? And the other thing is, once you practice it enough, you won't struggle. I think you did a great job with the problem. In different pitches or different businesses require different emphasis on the problem or the solution. Like in the previous example, I don't think anybody needs to really be told what a big problem student loans are. I mean, I think people know that. You don't have to spend too much time on the problem. In your case, it's a little more complicated, and I think you did a great job describing that problem. And you did it in a way in which you weren't just describing the problem, you were actually addressing or giving some figures and pointing to the way in which you're solving that problem, which kind of does a good job. The thing you didn't do enough is the solution. Like I got all kinds of questions about, like, is this voice recognition? Is this automated? I mean, do you have a bunch of people sitting in a corner just listening to these conversations? There's so many ways to do this, and I think that's what's going to hook the person to learn more, to be interested or not. The problem just kind of left us without the punch on the solution. On the market, I think Seth said it well. I mean, to throw a number like $2 billion, you were a little too broad there. And then I don't know what you were saying about working with the banks. I mean, that may be relevant, but I don't know. Maybe you were just trying to get it wrapped up. But that didn't really answer anything for me.
Could you talk more about the bank thing?
Sure. So the way basically where I was going is that some of the companies that we've been able to speak with here in Charlotte since we've joined the Queen City program have shown interest in Speakalytics. But the reason I brought that up is because I wanted to share that they are more willing to invest in a real-time solution. And so that was going to lead me to my ask, which would be of $650K, so that we're able to provide that real-time.
But
What's the problem that the banks have?
Is it a wealth call center platform?
So if you look at a lot of the physical locations that are being closed, I think Wells Fargo has closed 400 physical locations. BB&T has closed 170. They're expected to close 170 this year, 140 this year. That's going to create a lot more responsibility on their contact centers, in which we would actually then be able to assist in analyzing those calls to ensure that they actually understand what's most important to their customers. If you look from the wealth and management divisions across some of the companies here, they are looking for more innovative ways to understand what actually is important to their investors and buyers.
So you're great. James and I are old buddies. The part that you're kind of circling now, we were talking about the banks and their specific need and this wealth management thing. I think if you can get, like, when you're communicating what you do, the high level part's good, right? It's really good, right? If you could say, let me give you an example, and then dig right into Wells Fargo's wealth management organization has this problem, right? And now they don't have 400 people out in the field like they used to have because they closed 400 branches. So now they're calling in some call center. It's different. It's really different. And so here's exactly what their need is, right? Like if you can illustrate that you understand that, and that that's kind of the problem you're going after, I think it'll be more compelling because the pitch today, like you and I had breakfast, so I kind of understand what you're doing. This was a lot shorter, so obviously it would be, but this was kind of vague, and you know a heck of a lot more about all this stuff than came out in your pitch, right? So I just like get a little more specific kind of when you go through that, and like if there is a Wells Fargo wealth management case, right? I would dig into something like that so you could say, here's a real tangible problem, right? That's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think a use case.
Lister agreed with me.
Yeah, I do. In this case, I had to. It's been too long.
I don't.
Well, so the use case would be useful to understand the problem. Although I think you did a good job addressing the problem. What the use case does, what the banks does, it starts to talk. And sometimes it's great to throw hints like this, like that you have customer traction, right? You don't have to brag about the fact that you have
that you know
sales.
Something that not everybody else knows.
Yeah,
Right.
And
Yeah.
it gives you credibility. The same thing about the market. You could talk about when people start thinking banks and customers, and some people start imagining big markets without you having to say a $2 billion number. It gives you more credibility. But again, my problem is I have no clue how you work and what you do in terms of the solution. I still, in order for me to be even interested, even if I understand the problem and hear that you have addressing a big problem with banks and you have traction, if I don't get that you're doing something different than somebody else, and believe me, I mean, I've heard a bunch of different pitches doing similar things. I need to hear about your solution, and I would love to hear now what it is.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to explain what we do. So, imagine being able to leverage voice analytics to analyze each sales call. What we're able to do is transcribe the call, and using deep learning, we're able to determine if the call was effective, determine the reasons why, and determine what the customer sentiment is throughout the call, because obviously being able to understand what's important to the customer adds value. And then subsequently highlighting the buying opportunities within the call. So being able to highlight where are your questions, or what are the most common questions in the calls, what are the most common objections, and if the responses by their sales reps are actually effective.
So nobody does this now? I mean, do they not do this now? Nobody listens to calls and provides a grade on, because every time I call somebody, I hear this call is being recorded for customer analysis or something like that.
That's right. So a lot of our competitors today are focused more on what the agent is actually doing, but there isn't that much focus on the actual buyer. And so the technology that we really bring is listening to the buyer, bringing the voice of the buyer actually into the market, so that 13% of buyers who only believe that the only 13% of buyers that believe that salespeople understand their needs will increase to increase their spending.
Is this, one more question, sorry, is this automated or is it manual?
It's automated, so it's software that actually does all this. We've been able to create artificial intelligence that can actually analyze these calls.
So that's great. I mean, you should have said that, because otherwise it
That's
changes.
the competitive differentiator, right, James? You need to have at least a statement in there, what your address and why it's unique. Is there questions from the audience? One question, quick.
I have a curiosity question.
Yes.
Can you model this, or can you use this in other industries, like let's say healthcare, have it be HIPAA compliant, things like that?
Yeah, so one of the recent features that we recently implemented is the ability for sales leaders or any type of administrator to actually go in and say, here are the phrases that we want to look for, whether it be by the agent or whether it be by the customer. We can actually recognize if those phrases or terms were used and the frequency in which they were used. So I think there is certainly the ability to look into compliance and even auditing as well.
Go ahead.
With the
I like this.
having the ability to integrate with other call center type technology to do more real-time feedback during the call or the conference?
Yeah, so I think within about 3 months we would be able to offer a real-time solution. The way that our software is structured today, everything is all post-analysis, so we take a call recording and strip it down and actually analyze it, but the direction in which we're heading is providing a real-time solution that it can be integrated across multiple channels.
So while they get changing out, we want to have the audience involved, so we'll try to give you guys a minute or two each time for questions.
Ladies and gentlemen,